everyone, and welcome to the next episode in the Future People podcast. I'm Amy, and I'm the Future People Programme Employability Coordinator at the University of Law, and we'll be starting a criminal pupillage in March 2024. Today, I'm joined by Georgie, who's now going to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Georgie. I'm the Mistress of Moots this year for the Advocacy Committee. I'm a bar course student at the University of Law and currently applying for pupillage to start in 2024.
So the plan today is to talk a little bit about the advocacy support that ULaw offers, both in terms of its compulsory modules as part of the bar course, but also the extracurricular things that they offer, particularly in terms of mooting. And that's why it's really great that we've got Georgie with us today to talk about what the Advocacy Committee offers, while you're also doing your advocacy sessions. And I think there are some benefits to this. Certainly for me, say you're learning a topic about, say, for example, bad character or a different topic in litigation, you then have the opportunity to put that into practice in a skills session. So, Georgie, could you talk a little bit as a current student, what kind of your week looks like? So how does it work with the kind of litigation sessions, and then where do the advocacy sessions fit into that?
Yeah, so my timetable is about 8 hours a week. So every Tuesday I have 2 hours of civil litigation, followed by 2 hours or an hour, depending on which week, of civil skills and civil advocacy. And then on Fridays, I have the same again, but for crime. So 2 hours of criminal litigation and 2 hours of criminal advocacy. So it's quite a nice split, focusing on just civil or crime in one day. And generally, your advocacy sessions will be on a similar topic to what you were talking about in the litigation class beforehand. So you've got a really good grasp of the content before you go and put that into practice in the advocacy class.
Absolutely. So you might say, for example, I mentioned bad character, and if you don't know what that is, just imagine it as a kind of concept that you're learning about, but you're not actually assessed on that in your advocacy session. So you don't do an advocacy exam on bad character, but you'll still do it. Still do an advocacy session on it, because not only is it going to prepare you well for the practicalities and realities of being a barrister, it also helps embed the knowledge that you've learnt in your classes about that topic. So what is the size differences between kind of your litigation classes and your skills sessions at ULaw?
So the litigation classes are a bit bigger. It's up to 16 people per class, so it kind of feels like a seminar. It's very kind of interactive and discussive. And then advocacy classes, it's either max 6 people, or it might even be 2 people. So then you really get a lot of time to get feedback and have those kind of one-on-one conversations with the tutors.
And for me, do they still record your advocacy sessions, Georgie?
Yeah, they record them and then they send them to you, so you can, even if you don't quite like watching yourself speak, you can watch yourself and see like what looks good and what went wrong, which is really helpful for kind of consolidation and improvement.
Yeah, I definitely found that useful, because not only do they record your actual advocacy, which you can watch back and think, oh, how could I do that better? They also record the feedback that you're given from your tutor. And in these small classes, you get really specific feedback, and sometimes have the chance to maybe redo a cross-examination after feedback's been given, which is really useful and gives you quite targeted feedback so that you can improve both for your exams, but I think just generally to improve as an advocate. So yeah, I mean, that's how it works at the University of Law. Other things that they offer kind of within the course, they do mock trials. I know that for me, I don't know if you did this, Georgie, but we did a kind of civil mock trial and actually a criminal mock trial within the teaching course within class. Did you do that?
Yeah, so about halfway through the second term, as you're kind of coming towards the end of all of the skills and the content, you do like a 2-hour session and you do a full civil trial, and then the next week you do like a full criminal trial, and you all have different roles. So you're using the same skills that you've learned, whether it's cross-examination, examination in chief, opening speeches, but you're seeing how it all flows and the order of the trial, which again is good for kind of consolidating the knowledge of how things work, both for practice, but also for the exams as well.
Yeah, it definitely kind of pulls it all together and helps you see how every individual thing you've learned comes together, and I think that's a really useful. They also offer some mock trials outside of class as kind of an extracurricular thing. So I took part in a mock trial at Inner London Crown Court, which was put on by the university. Fantastic experience getting to run a criminal trial in front of a judge, in front of a jury, doing opening speeches, doing cross-examinations, examination in chief, and a closing speech. And that's a kind of really great way of developing your advocacy in a pressured environment, because you're in a real courtroom and you've got a judge in front of you, and that does really help develop your advocacy, and indeed is a great thing to put on your CV and your pupillage applications. So moving now then, kind of following on from that to other extracurricular activities, mooting is a good thing to get involved in. So Georgie, can you just outline for us what mooting is? What is a moot?
So mooting is kind of like mock trial, mock court, but instead of it being trial, it's appellate level advocacy. So you're pretending you're in the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. There's not kind of any facts in dispute. You have the appellant and the respondent on either side, and you're arguing points of law. So you have to go away, research it, submit your skeleton argument, and then do the mock advocacy. Usually it's about a 10 to 15 minute speech in front of someone who is playing the role of the judge.
And the debates are kind of set up on it'll be a legal problem where there is clearly a legal debate, a bit of a grey area maybe where there's very much kind of points to be made on one side and clear points to be made on the other. And you mentioned a skeleton argument. What is that?
So a skeleton argument, the clue's kind of in the name. It's like the bare bones of your argument, the kind of headline points that you're going to be making. So then when you go into court, the judge kind of has like a guide or a menu almost of all of the things that you're going to talk about.
And this is something that you'll go on to use in practice, I presume?
Definitely, yeah.
So mooting is a great way really of demonstrating both your written and oral advocacy ability in a legal context. It demonstrates your legal research ability, your ability to respond to judicial intervention. So it's a really great thing to do, both to develop as an advocate, but also to demonstrate to chambers that you're applying to that you have these skills. So why do you think chambers look for it? I think I've touched on kind of the broad points there, but they do look for it, don't they? They expect to see some mooting when they're looking at who they're going to invite to interview, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I think mooting is up there with mini pupillages and pro bonos. It's very much an expected requirement that you've done some, and ideally you've seen some success in mooting as well, winning a moot or getting to a higher round. And I think it's important because, firstly, like you said, you're going to be doing it in practice. The first role of a barrister is to stand up in court and advocate for your client. And that's what mooting is. You're advocating for a given stance, whether you agree with it or not. And that's really important. But also, it develops those oral skills, that confidence in public speaking, which I think then helps when you go into interviews. Because you've had a judge put you under pressure in mooting, you can cope a bit better with an interviewer who puts you under pressure in chambers.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning at this stage that there are lots of different types of moots. So you can do really quick moots. It might be a speed moot that you're given everything you need. You might even be giving your skeleton argument, and all they're looking for is for you to be able to deliver that argument in front of a judge and maybe respond to some intervention. Then you've got some bigger moots where you might have to submit a bundle, or the first round might be judged on your skeleton and then might maybe move to a bigger problem. So there are lots of different ways to get involved in mooting depending on maybe the stage of how much mooting you've done before or how much time you have, but definitely a good thing to get involved in if you're going to be applying for pupillage. So this is something that you can apply for when essentially applying for the bar course. You've got to make sure that you submit your CV and cover letter for this early enough in the year. If you go onto the University of Law's website, it will outline when you need to have submitted and applied for to be considered for an advocacy scholarship. So do take a look at that. But what I would say is as soon as you know that you want to be doing the bar course at the University of Law, I'd apply as soon as possible. And it gives you a shot at this, at a scholarship and at being on the Advocacy Committee. So on that, Georgie, what would you say the benefits been of being on the Advocacy Committee, and how have you found the balance between kind of running these moots, the organisation side of it, alongside the course?
So I'd say the main benefit is that you're getting to see kind of the organisation of the moots, you're coaching, you're judging. So you're kind of learning a bit more about your own mooting skills through helping other people as you go. But it's also great on your CV to show that not only can you moot, but you can coach others, you can judge. And I think that does require kind of a bit of extra skill. And it always makes for great material in pupillage applications and pupillage interviews. They love to talk about it and hear about what we've done and what we've achieved.
There are some great benefits to being on the Advocacy Committee, but did you find it manageable alongside the bar course?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. There are 3 levels of scholarship. There's the advocacy scholars, there's a senior scholar on each campus who kind of oversees the committee for that campus, and then there's the master or mistress of moots who's based in London but oversees all of the campuses collectively. So I think as an advocacy scholar, it's a very manageable workload. They maybe spend about 2 to 3 hours a week, and we make sure that we finish and hand over to the next lot of scholars in plenty of time for exams. I would say that the senior scholars and myself as mistress of moots have had a bit more work because obviously you're overseeing it all, but then I think you get kind of an equal amount of benefit out of it. I think it's very much one of those things of the role is what you make of it and you'll get out what you put in. So it's really rewarding in that respect.
And you mentioned barristers coming to judge the meets. Presumably also this is giving you an opportunity to discuss things with barristers, engage with barristers, kind of build your network in a sense through that.
Yeah, definitely. Through working with barristers who come in as sponsors, it's been great because we've made the most of the contacts that everyone on committee has, but we've also all made new contacts. And this term, organising lots of individual moots, I've got to go and visit all of these different chambers and kind of meet all of these different people that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise meet. So you kind of build your network in that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier on about the coaching element, but also probably being involved in so many meets, even though you're yourselves and the advocacy scholars are great mooters, probably picking up on advice that judges or barristers are giving to these mooters. So you're getting a whole range of experience by the very nature of watching and listening and taking in the advice that the mooters are being given. So I do think it really kind of gives you a wide range of skills and experience from being on the committee. Anything else would you say to add? But I think you've covered a lot there. I think it's interesting, isn't it, for kind of pupillage applications, quite often ask these competency-based questions. Tell us about a time you've worked under pressure. Tell us about a time where you've had to organise, you've changed something last minute as a result of new information. And actually being on a committee and organising events when there's lots of different moving parts and spinning plates gives you great experience to demonstrate that you're going to be a good barrister. So definitely something to consider if you're applying for the bar course. Take a look at the website, see when you need to apply for, and consider if it's something for you. So as you've said, Georgie, you're a member of the Advocacy Committee and they are responsible for providing a lot of the meeting opportunities at the University of Law. So if we start from the beginning, how is it that you come to be on the Advocacy Committee?
So the Advocacy Committee is formed of advocacy scholars. So it's not like a traditional student society in terms of putting yourself up and being voted in. You apply for the scholarship at the same time you apply for your place on the bar course with the University of Law. And so in addition to the selection day to get onto the bar course, you also submit a CV and cover letter for why you would like to be on the Advocacy Committee.
Right. And then you kind of form, there's not just in London, is it? Across different campuses, there are advocacy scholars that kind of do the same thing. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, so on every campus where there is the bar course, there is an advocacy committee. We've got 40 scholars this year across about 8 campuses, so it's a big organisation, yeah.
And what is the role of the advocacy committee? What are you meant to be doing?
So we provide mooting opportunities primarily for people on the bar course, but also for GDL students and other conversion students. So we run moots within the university aimed at perhaps beginners or people who don't want to commit as much time and energy because they have lots of other things going on. But we also select, coach and enter teams into the bigger national and international moots. So just last week we had a team in Vienna for oral rounds of the Viz moot, which was great.
Incredible. And you mentioned select. How do you go about selecting, and how do you go about coaching as well?
So in September, October each year, the committee runs the advocacy allocation process, which is advertised to all students by email, and essentially every student does a little speed moot, maybe 7 minutes or 10 minutes with not too much preparation required, and we use that to rank all of the interested students and allocate them to different external moot teams. And we do ask people for their preferences, so the higher you rank, the more likely you are to get your preference, and that way we can hopefully enter the best students into the best teams.
And so you've touched on a little bit about kind of internal moots and external moots, but what throughout the year can you kind of sum up and say for this year what a student has been offered in terms of meeting through the advocacy committee?
Yeah, so going through the year, there was advocacy allocation quite early on. And then for the students who found that to be, because it's a competition kind of at the very beginning, that for those who found that to be a bit much, we ran the Ruth Bader Ginsburg moot in kind of October, November. And that's basically a widening participation moot aimed at first-timers. So the first 2 rounds are non-elimination. We offered drop-in and advice sessions. So it was really open to kind of encourage people to do their best. And then it had a few more rounds, all the way went through to a final judged by some barristers, and that finished at the end of term. So then this term, we've been focusing on finishing off the external moots. So all the teams that were selected back in September, they're still going because a lot of those moots last the whole year or don't have oral rounds until kind of spring. So we've continued to be coaching those teams and seeing some successes along the way. But internally, we've also been doing a lot of smaller moots. So it will be the first round, you just enter a skeleton, we pick 4 finalists off of that, and those finalists go straight in front of barristers, and they've all had, luckily, mini pupillages as the prize, and we've had about 10 of those this term. So it's been a packed term with plenty of opportunities from September, and those will continue until July.
And it's clear that, there's opportunities both, as you said, for those that are really successful advocacy allocation, maybe have done mooting before, really confident with advocacy in a legal context, but there's also opportunities for beginners. And I think that comes across that the advocacy committee has made sure there are opportunities for all. And that's something that people can expect from the advocacy support at the University of Law. So do you think there's anything to add about the advocacy committee? Is there anything else that do you think stands out that I might have missed? But other than mooting, mooting is the main thing, isn't it, really?
I would just say that there's plenty of opportunities both on the course and in terms of extracurricular. So whether you've already got mooting experience and want to kind of do more difficult competitions, you want to go on those international trips, there's something for you. But if you've never mooted before and you just want to give it a go, there's something for you. So there really is opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting about the kind of coaching element as well, that through the advocacy committee, not only do you get entered into these external meets, but you're offered support and guidance through these meets, which I think is really valuable and will help you have success when entering these meeting competitions. So I think that rounds off this episode nicely, and big thank you to you, Georgie, for coming in and speaking. It's been really useful and given us a really good insight into the advocacy support that the University of Law offers. So thank you for listening, and until next time, goodbye from me.